Chapter 81 Foundation Seizure Part 1. It was an indescribable ancient sword, with an otherworldly aura pervading it that drew people irresistibly into its depths. After a long while, Wang Lin gradually awakened, his eyes flickering with apparent insight. 3 days later, Tang Family City was bustling with activity, numerous cultivators coming and going in an extraordinarily lively atmosphere. Tiger Zhang and Wang Lin had left the inn early to wander the city, since Tiger Zhang needed to sell the ginseng. After discussing with Wang Lin, he left on his own. Wang Lin strolled through the city, examining stall after stall. Among them were several magical treasures that caught his interest, but unfortunately, their prices were too high. With his meager funds, he could only walk away. As he walked, he suddenly stopped. Before him was a cultivator's stall with scattered tailmessness on his flying sword, along with a thread-bound book. On the book's cover were a few small characters, basic her theory research notes. Arrays? Wang Lin stroked his chin and picked it up. The small book was thick, about 50 or 60 pages, densely filled with tiny characters and some diagrams. 10 mid-grade spirit stones. Don't touch if you're not buying. The stall owner, a young man around 30, lifted his eyelids and spoke unhurriedly. 10 mid-grade spirit stones was all his current wealth. Wang Lin pondered briefly, flipped through it a few more times, and seeing the owner growing impatient, he placed 10 mid-grade spirit stones on the ground, took the array theory book, and turned to leave. After making another round of the stalls, Wang Lin saw many wood attribute materials, most of them expensive, with one piece of ironwood reaching an astronomical price. A day passed unknowingly, and before nightfall Wang Lin returned to the inn. Just as he was about to enter, his eyebrows suddenly lifted, and he stopped. Usually at this time, the inn would be bustling with activity, but today it was eerily quiet. Wang Lin's divine sense swept out, and his expression immediately changed slightly. The entire inn was covered by a mysterious aura, like a mist blocking his divine sense. Without a word, Wang Lin's body explosively retreated, the gravity technique enveloping his entire body as he shot back dozens of zhang like an arrow leaving its string. "Oh, quite a quick reaction." A slightly surprised voice drifted out, followed by someone walking out of the inn. He was 25 or 26, with star-bright eyes and sword-light eyebrows, dressed in snow-white clothes with a black vine embroidered on his sleeve. He looked at the rapidly retreating Wang Lin and coldly smiled, saying, "Teng Jia, Teng Yi, you two wait here for Tiger Zhang's return. Cripple his cultivation and send him to the dungeon. I'll go catch this clever little fellow." As soon as he finished speaking, 2 shadowy figures suddenly appeared before him, gradually solidifying into 2 elderly men with wrinkled faces. One of them said in a deep voice, "Young master, these 2 are still within our Tang Family City. Doing this already breaks the rules set by the old master. If the old master asks." The white-clothed youth frowned, staring in the direction of Wang Lin's escape, and said, "If my great-grandfather asks, just tell the truth. This Tiger Zhang colluded with outsiders to kill his own master, committing such an unfilial act. How could I let them go?" After speaking, he swept his sleeve, his body instantly rising into the air, rapidly pursuing in Wang Lin's direction. After watching the youth leave, the 2 elderly men transformed back into shadowy figures and vanished without a trace. Wang Lin pushed himself to his limit, exerting his full speed in flight. In the blink of an eye, he reached the outskirts of Tang Family City. Just as he was about to break through, several figures suddenly emerged from the city walls, shouting from afar. Flying is strictly forbidden in Tang Family City. "Friend, halt." Wang Lin said nothing. In this moment of crisis, he couldn't worry about exposing his spiritual liquid. His right hand turned over, taking out a spiritual gourd, and he took a large drink. Immediately his internal spiritual power increased. He took a deep breath. His body paused, but then instantly shot forward at twice its previous speed. Like light, The several Tang family disciples blocking his way all changed expression. Wanting to stop him, Wang Lin waved his hand broadly, spreading the gravity technique around him. All the disciples blocking his path were grabbed and thrown aside. Like a force-breaking bamboo, Wang Lin burst out of Tang family city. Behind him, due to his previous actions, over 100 Tang family disciples riding various magical treasures gave chase. Wang Lin felt bitter inside. Even now he couldn't quite figure out what had happened at the inn. The situation earlier clearly showed they were waiting for him to return to the inn. If he hadn't decisively fled immediately, his situation would likely be dire now. As for Tiger Jing, Wang Lin could barely protect himself now and couldn't worry about much else. He could only hope Tiger Jing would find his own way to safety. After leaving Tang family city, Wang Lin rushed south, with the many Tang family disciples in close pursuit. Just then, a rainbow beam suddenly shot through the sky from Tang family city's direction, carrying an immense aura. In the blink of an eye, it overtook the pursuing Tang family disciples and struck at Wang Lin with a sword, a huge flying sword, almost solidified into physical form, materialized, carrying intense killing intent as it slashed down from the sky. In that instant, heaven and earth changed color, and countless purple thunder orbs suddenly condensed in the sky, falling along with the flying sword. Wang Lin scalped Ingold Asicun and roared, "Damn it, this is a core formation level treasure. Wang Lin, focus your mind. I'll help you teleport, we'll risk it." Blue crystal rapidly spread from Wang Lin's chest, pervading his entire body. At this moment, the giant sword slashed down, the ground thundering with continuous booms as huge cracks appeared. Purple thunder orbs fell with it, forming a field of lightning and thunder waves within 100 jang radius. Wang Lin's body disappeared at the instant the giant sword fell, repairing 300 jang away. As soon as he appeared, Wang Lin said nothing and fled forward at top speed. Sichunan's voice was somewhat weak as he angrily cursed. "This little bastard is so young yet already has late foundation establishment cultivation. If you were at foundation establishment, old man could borrow your body to use some major technique. But now, with your key condensation level strength, even with all my help, we could at most defeat a mid-foundation establishment cultivator." Tang Li frowned but immediately relaxed and smiled. "The local formation. You're the first to escape my sword unscathed. What I didn't expect was that you'd have a treasure capable of teleportation. That treasure will be mine." Wang Lin didn't look back, fleeing at high speed. With his spiritual power greatly depleted, he worthlessly capped the gourd and took another large drink, his speed immediately increasing again. Ting Li's eyes flashed coldly as his voice grew grim, saying, "Let's see how many times you can teleport." As he finished speaking, his right hand pointed, and the sky immediately darkened as the giant sword reappeared. Chapter 82, Foundation Seizure Part 2. The materialized giant sword swept across the sky, all thunder orbs instantly moving with it, and amid rolling thunderclaps, it suddenly slashed down, without waiting for Wang Lin's command. Sichuan immediately cursed a few times and helped Wang Lin teleport again, appearing 1,000 jang away. Tang Li frowned and coldly snorted. His right hand pointed at the flying sword, which quickly turned around, landed beneath his feet, and carried him in rapid pursuit. Two rainbow beams, one in front and one behind, cut through the sky. The 100+ Tang family disciples followed for a while, but finally couldn't keep up with the speed of the two ahead and had to stop reluctantly. The longer Tang Li chased, the more shocked he became. With his late foundation establishment cultivation, his speed was already extremely fast, but the youth ahead would immediately teleport away whenever he was about to catch up. The more this happened, the stronger the killing intent grew in Tang Li's eyes. Teleportation was a technique unique to core formation experts, yet this person who hadn't even reached foundation establishment could somehow teleport. Tang Li figured he must possess some magical treasure. Thinking of this, he licked his lips. his desire to kill and seize treasures growing stronger. He and elder Yumo's senior disciple Chen Zong were close friends. A few days ago, he had received a sword message from Chen Zong asking for help in hunting down two people, one of whom was Tiger Zhang, a disciple of Chen Zong's fifth junior fellow apprentice. This Tiger Zhang had conspired with an outsider to kill his master, at the moment of his fifth junior fellow apprentice's death. Elder Yumo immediately sensed it. What Zhang didn't know was that besides being poisoned, he also had Elder Yumo's secret technique for controlling disciples within him. Through this technique, Elder Yumo instantly understood everything that had happened that day. In his fury, he used the secret technique to divine that they were currently in Tang Family City, so he sent Chen Zong out to capture the two. Since Chen Zong was too far away, he sent a sword message to Tang Li, asking him to intercept them. When Tang Li investigated and found that Tiger Zhang was indeed in Tang Family City, and the person traveling with him was clearly his accomplice, this led to the earlier events. Originally, he was just doing a small favor, but now Tang Li had made up his mind to kill Wang Lin no matter what and seize his teleportation treasure. Thinking of this, he increased his speed and continued the pursuit. Wang Lin took a large drink of spiritual liquid, a fierce look flashing across his face. He spat out a green light, and as soon as it emerged, a bloody aura pervaded the surroundings. The green light flashed and shot backward. Wang Lin didn't stop, continuing to flee forward at high speed. Tang Li watched clearly from behind and completely disregarded the green light. He coldly smiled, pointed his right index finger, and immediately a thunder orb appeared, rushing toward the green light. When they collided, there was a thunderous explosion. Tang Li looked on contemptuously and was about to look away when suddenly, three Zhang in front of him, the green light flashed and stabbed rapidly, striking his body with a bat. Tang Li's white clothes instantly turned to ash, revealing a gold and gleaming inner armor beneath. After the green light strike was blocked by the inner armor, it immediately turned and vanished without a trace. Wang Lin secretly sighed in regret, waved his right hand, and a small green sword appeared between his two fingers. Without looking back, he fled again. Sweat appeared on Tang Li's forehead. The previous moment had been too dangerous even with his late foundation establishment cultivation. If the flying sword had struck him, he would certainly have been severely injured. Moreover, judging by the sword's cold gleam, it was no ordinary weapon. He might have died on the spot of stirrup. Tang Li touched the inner armor his great-grandfather had given him, secretly feeling fortunate, but his determination to hunt down Wang Lin grew even stronger. His eyes flashed coldly as he muttered to himself, "Besides the teleportation treasure, there's also this marvelous flying sword. Little fellow, everything you have will belong to me." Tang Li. 3 days later, on a wasteland, Wang Lin's face was covered in dust as he finished drinking a gourd of spiritual liquid. He bitterly muttered to himself, "The spiritual liquid is running low. At this rate, it will soon be depleted. I must replenish it quickly. Kid, I can't go on much longer. Too many teleportation as these 3 days have severely depleted my core formation essence." Sechunen's voice was extremely weak. Wang Lin looked back into the distance, a trace of killing intent appearing in his eyes. He said coldly, "He's coming again." As he spoke, he patted his storage pouch, and a small green sword suddenly appeared. The sword's luster was slightly dim, and there were even some scratches on it. These 3 days, Wang Lin had thrown out the small sword numerous times, but after Tang Li became vigilant, sneak attacks became increasingly difficult, especially with that inner armor of his which possessed strong resistance. Even the sword's sharp edge couldn't penetrate it at all. After bringing out the flying sword, Wang Lin's divine sense swept the area, suddenly focusing on the west. There lay an endless forest with a layer of purple-black mist swirling above it, making details unclear. After brief consideration, Wang Lin wordlessly changed direction and flew west. In the blink of an eye, he arrived at the forest's edge. Without hesitation, He quickly descended and charged into the forest. Wang Lin knew well that his spiritual liquid was almost gone, and Sichun An's teleportation ability was nearly exhausted. If he continued flying in the sky, he would eventually be caught. Better to give up flying and walk through the jungle. Although he didn't know why there was that strange mist above the forest when his divine sense had swept through it earlier. He discovered that divine sense moved through it like wading through mud, with its range restricted to just a few dozen jans. Shortly after Wang Lin entered the forest, a rainbow beam broke through the sky, circled above the forest once before landing, revealing the gold and gleaming Tengli. His face now showed slight fatigue. 3 days of continuous pursuit and flight had consumed too much spiritual power. If not for the spirit replenishing pills in his storage pouch, he would have likely given up the chase long ago. But the magical treasures in his quarry's possession kept gnawing at his heart, making him desperate to catch up with Wang Lin, kill him, and seize his treasures. Additionally, when Tengli first began the pursuit, he hadn't expected it to be so difficult. Even when his target used teleportation techniques, though surprised, he had thought that since the other party hadn't even reached Foundation establishment, their spiritual power would surely be severely depleted by long-term flight. With his late Foundation establishment strength, he could wear them down if nothing else, so he hadn't rushed during pursuit, quietly waiting for his target to exhaust their spiritual power before planning to strike Wang Lin down with one sword blow. But by the second day of pursuit, he had completely abandoned this idea. Not only had his quarry's speed not decreased, it had actually increased, leaving him utterly puzzled. As he observed, Tengli gradually became shocked. He saw his target frequently take out a gourd, and after each drink from it, their speed would noticeably increase. Along the way, he had witnessed this countless time. His determination to kill Wang Lin grew even stronger. Tengli stood at the forest's edge, his gaze flickering with hesitation as he thought to himself, "This primitive forest is quite mysterious, perpetually shrouded in mist. Even great-grandfather said not to enter here lightly. Now should I pursue or not?" After brief consideration, Tengli gritted his teeth. The magical treasures in his quarry's possession firmed his resolve, and without another word, he charged in. Inside the forest, ancient trees reached to the sky, competing for glory. The ground was covered with dead branches and rotting leaves, with venomous creatures like centipedes and snakes occasionally flashing past. Massive thousand-year-old trees could be seen everywhere, with all sorts of strange flowers and herbs scattered through. Countless fierce beasts and birds would sometimes meet and fight, and beyond this was the stench emanating from rotting leaves and animal corpses. This smell had accumulated over long years, eventually becoming a miasma that could kill invisibly. This place was perpetually shrouded in mist, with ancient trees growing eerily, and countless powerful beasts comparable to core formation experts dwelling deep within. Every step held danger. One small mistake could cost one's life. Wang Lin spread his divine sense as his body quickly darted through the jungle. Suddenly, Setunan urgently shouted, "Stop! Quick! Stop!" Wang Lin instantly halted. What kind of hellish place is this? How can there be blue line vines here? Damn it, that thing is a minor apocalypse plant. Several second-tier cultivation nations were once destroyed by blue line vine. Setunan caught his breath and said, "Blue line vine?" Wang Lin was stunned. "There's a vine in front of you with blue lines." No, this isn't a blue line vine. Strange. Wang Lin. This should be an initial juvenile branch of a blue line vine. Its power might not be as great as rumored, but you'd better avoid it. The mature blue line vine is the nightmare of cultivators below core formation. This thing is extremely sensitive to blood, and every time it devours a cultivator, it evolves. Legend has it that when evolved to its ultimate state, even nascent soul experts can't resist it. Moreover, it's equally sensitive to spiritual power fluctuations from techniques. You absolutely must not attack it with techniques. Setunan's tone was solemn. Wang Lin looked around. his gaze falling on a vine growing on the surface of a giant tree in the distance, showing cautious respect in his eyes. The vine looked ordinary, with no major differences from other vines except for a faint blue line visible on its surface. Wang Lin pondered briefly, but didn't follow Sichu Nan's advice to leave. Instead, he slowly approached, not using any spiritual power, carefully using his thumb and forefinger to gently pinch the vine and slowly pull it back. Throughout the process, he maintained intense concentration, gradually pulling out about 3 zhang of vine before slowly releasing it. He retreated several dozen zhang, quickly cut his fingertip, and flicked a drop of blood onto the vine. When the vine was struck by the blood, it immediately thrashed like a snake raising its head. Then several more blue line vines extended from its base, gathering together and writhing a few times before slowly settling down onto the ground. Sweat appeared on Wang Lin's forehead as his mouth curved into a slight smile before he quickly left. Not long after he left, Tang Li pursued to this spot. In his rush to catch up with Wang Lin, he had been using techniques to move and paid no attention to the seemingly unremarkable vines on the ground. Although his divine sense was restricted to within 100 zhang in the forest, he could clearly feel that he was getting closer and closer to Wang Lin. With a cold smile on his lips, his body moved forward in pursuit. But just as he passed over several seemingly ordinary vines, an unexpected change occurred. Chapter 83, Foundation Seizure Part 3. 2 days later, Wang Lin was by a small river filling his water container while cautiously observing his surroundings. Suddenly his expression changed and he cursed. This haunting presence just won't leave. He released his flying sword, put away his gourd, and limped across the river, rushing into the depths of the forest. Shortly after, Ting Mi cautiously followed, not daring to use even a bit of magical power. He was in a terribly dishevelled state. The golden inner armor on his body had lost its luster and had large patches peeling off. His right arm was obviously limp, hanging at his shoulder, with dishevelled hair and an ashen face. His eyes blazed with fury. His hatred for Wang Lin had surpassed everything else. As a gifted prodigy since childhood, he had never been in such a pathetic and embarrassing state. All of this was thanks to Wang Lin. 2 days ago, those strange vines had nearly brought him to death's door. He never imagined those unremarkable vines could possess such power. Even his inner armor began to melt when touched by the liquid they sprayed. If that was all, it would have been fine. He could have attacked with his flying sword. But these vines seemed unkillable. Cut one and two would grow in its place, eventually becoming more and more numerous. Even the thunder orbs accompanying his flying sword couldn't completely eliminate the vines. Moreover, Wang Lin's strange flying sword would appear to sneak attack him. His right arm was wounded by that very sword. Finally, Tang Li had no choice but to use the life-saving treasure given to him by the Ting family's old master, an extremely powerful Yuan Bao. This Yuan Bao could only attack once. Since receiving it, he had never encountered a crisis requiring its use. But 2 days ago, he knew that if he didn't use it, his life would likely be forfeit. In the end, under the Yuan Bao's immense power, most of the vines were destroyed, with the remainder retreating underground. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Tang Li quickly escaped. Even now, thinking about it, he broke into a cold sweat, his hatred for Wang Lin having reached the bone, especially since this Wang Lin never fought him head-on, always relying on sneak attacks. That strange flying sword was particularly unpredictable, forcing him to constantly drain his spiritual power by keeping his flying sword circling around his body for protection. By the riverside, he cautiously looked around, hesitated briefly, then crouched down to scoop up some river water and take a drink. After 5 or 6 days of pursuit, his mouth was parched. The river water was sweet and refreshing. Tang Li immediately felt his spirits lift and scooped up more. Just as he was about to drink, his heart suddenly jolted. A green flying sword had silently appeared before him, flashing toward his face in a flash. Tang Li didn't even blink as he quickly retreated. Simultaneously, his own flying sword that had been circling him rushed forward to meet the green sword. They became entangled, producing clank-clang sounds of metal collision. Finally, the green small sword was clearly outmatched, its scratches becoming even more severe, and with a flash it vanished into thin air. Damn you! When I catch you, I'll make you taste every torture in existence, then extract your soul and slowly refine it alive. I, Tang Li, swear this, Tang Li shouted furiously, watching his hair slowly floating down where the green small sword's blade had swept past. Wang Lin was running through the forest when his face reddened and a mouthful of blood flowed from his lip. His right hand turned over and the green small sword appeared. He painfully looked at the deep scratches on the sword's body, his eyes flickering with cold light, and without a word, quickly left. 5 days later, in the deep of night, Wang Lin and Tang Li, one fleeing, one pursuing, had already entered deep into the forest. That night, while Wang Lin was running, he suddenly stopped. Kid, did you sense it? There's dense spiritual power fluctuation in the northwest direction. Let's go take a look. Sechunen quickly said. During this period, he had maintained heightened alertness every day, using his experience to help Wang Lin avoid one crisis after another in the forest. Without a word, Wang Lin changed direction and leapt northwest. Before long, he arrived at the location of the spiritual power fluctuation. The scene before him made his pupils contract. Under the moonlight, ahead of him ancient giant trees had been uprooted and were scattered around, clearing out an open space. A completely rotted corpse without any trace of life lay on the ground. Above its head, a green orb floated in midrang, with threads of spiritual power gathering from all directions, forming vortexes around the green orb. Green Dan? I didn't expect to find someone practicing 4th-tier cultivation nation's demonic green Dan technique in a 3rd-tier nation, Sechunen said in surprise. What's a green Dan? Wang Lin asked. It's a unique core formation method used by demonic cultivators in 4th-tier cultivation nations. This green Dan is also called the explosive Dan. It's different from orthodox golden core. You can only have one golden core. But there's no limit to the number of green Dans. I remember there was once a deranged madman from a 4th-tier nation who possessed tens of thousands of green Dans, though he was only at core formation. Even nascent cell experts from 5th-tier nations were reluctant to provoke him. You see, besides increasing cultivation, the green Dan's greatest use is self-detonation. When over 10,000 green Dans detonate together, that power is extraordinary, Sechunen explained. Wang Lin's eyes flickered as he suddenly asked, Can you sense how many green Dans this person has? Him? One would be good enough. Moreover, this person is clearly not alive, should be a newly intelligent corpse demon. Probably was a demonic cultivator from a 4th-tier nation who used a secret technique to transform into a corpse demon at the moment of death. The corpse demon had clearly noticed Wang Lin. Without rising, it lightly raised its right index finger, and with a crackling sound, a green light shot from its fingertip straight toward Wang Lin's brow. Wang Lin quickly retreated, avoiding the green light. The green light didn't pursue but circled around, suddenly condensing together to form a hazy, human figure that stared at Wang Lin and issued unclear sounds. Leave this place. You die. After speaking, its figure flickered and transformed into countless green points that disappeared into the surroundings. Immediately after, the originally intense spiritual power fluctuations instantly vanished without a trace, completely concealed. Wang Lin carefully retreated, not blinking as he quickly left. Cold light flickered in his eyes, but instead of continuing to flee from Tang Li, he stood straight in the distance, spread his divine sense, and quietly waited for Tang Li to arrive. Tang Li's flying sword circled his body, continuously cutting down all obstacles in front. Suddenly his expression changed and he revealed a fierce smile. His left hand pointed at the flying sword, which immediately shot forward rapidly. Wang Lin's figure was now within sight. Tang Li suddenly felt uneasy and suspiciously looked around, though he found nothing unusual. His opponent's abnormal behavior made him cautious. He coldly smiled and said, "Why aren't you running any more?" Wang Lin pointed with his right hand, and the green flying sword immediately appeared before him. Without a word he quickly flung it forward, and the sword stabbed out. Simultaneously, he patted his storage pouch and a jade slip flew out. Wang Lin formed hand seals and spat out a breath of spiritual energy onto the jade slip. Immediately 4 golden characters emerged from the jade slip. Ting Li smiled viciously, bit his left index finger, and flicked a drop of blood onto his own flying sword. The sword immediately trembled and emitted an otherworldly red light, instantly growing larger to form a giant sword. Several thunder orbs appeared with it, though notably fewer than before. As soon as the giant sword appeared, it emanated an intense cold aura. Following Ting Li's left-hand gesture, the giant sword immediately slashed down. Wang Lin's green small sword teleported to appear behind Ting Li. About to stab, and when Ting Li patted his storage pouch and a small bell flew out, it instantly grew larger, transforming into a Simton wrist state and covering Ting Li's body. The green small sword struck the bell, immediately creating ripples across its surface. At the same time, the giant sword swept. Wang Lin pointed at the golden characters on the jade slip, and all 4 characters flew out to meet the giant sword. After doing this, his body quickly retreated, in an instant arriving at the corpse demon's location. Those 4 golden characters collided with the giant sword and all exploded. Amid the spiritual power turbulence, the giant sword repeatedly rose higher, but there were too few characters. After all 4 had exploded, the giant sword paused briefly in mitre before slashing down again at extreme speed. The ground made cracking sounds, clearly unable to withstand the giant sword's pressure. The surrounding ancient giant trees all collapsed. Just as the giant sword was about to strike, Wang Lin's eyes flashed, and a blue light appeared from his chest position, quickly spreading throughout his body as he initiated teleportation, almost grazing the giant sword's edge. Wang Lin appeared 100 jang away. A trickle of blood flowed from his forehead. The giant sword struck with a boom. Immediately after, a ghost-like piercing shriek suddenly rang out, and a figure emanating a thick corpse stench quickly rushed out from where the giant sword had struck, pouncing toward Ting Li's face. Ting Li's expression changed dramatically. He had been somewhat suspicious earlier, but hadn't expected such a monster to be here. His left hand quickly pointed, and the thunder orbs from the giant sword fell like raindrops onto the corpse demon's body. These thunder orbs were extremely powerful and naturally countered all dead things. When they struck the corpse demon, they immediately exploded, causing it to cry out in agony as rotting flesh flew in all directions, some places even revealing blackened bone. Ting Li smiled coldly, his left hand pointing again. Immediately over 10 more thunder orbs appeared around the giant sword and fell. Moreover, the giant sword moved to slash down as well. Wang Lin inwardly cursed his bad luck. He hadn't expected the corpse demon to be so weak. He was about to flee. The corpse demon also seemed to realize the danger. Faced with life or death crisis, it immediately screamed several times and spat out its green dan. As soon as the green dan appeared, it immediately released an earth-shaking boom as it exploded. A ring-shaped triple immediately spread rapidly outward with the corpse demon as the center point. Surrounding trees instantly turned to ash. Ting Li was too close to escape in time. Gritting his teeth, he bit his tongue and spat a mouthful of essence blood onto the giant bell covering his body. The giant bell flashed, instantly changing from semten ristunter to solid state. Ancient symbols could faintly be seen on the bell surface. When the ring-shaped triple collided, the giant bell flickered violently, only lasting a moment before shattering. Using the time bought by the bell's resistance, Ting Li threw out several more magical treasures. As the giant bell shattered, layer after layer of defensive barriers appeared around his body. Chapter 84, Foundation Stealing Part 4. The layers of defensive barriers, flickering with multicolored light, shattered at an incredible speed. Under the impact of the ripples, they were like layers of thin paper trying to block a sharp sword. As for Wang Lin, being at a considerable distance and since May's main target was Tang Li, he was less affected by the attack. When the ripples approached, he calmly took out a jade talisman from his storage pouch and tossed it into the air. The moment it appeared, the talisman split in half, releasing a yellow gas that quickly enveloped his body. Through the yellow gas, his gaze remained fixed on Tang Li. As the ripples from the green pill's explosion gradually weakened, all of Tang Li's defensive layers had been completely destroyed. The moment the final defensive layer shattered, Tang Li pointed with his left hand, commanding the giant sword hovering in the air to block the corpse demon's path, preventing another attack. Simultaneously, he swiftly retreated, instantly moving 50 zhang away. He had developed a deep fear of this suddenly appearing corpse demon. If it weren't for his numerous magical treasures, anyone else in his position would likely have perished on the spot. The self-destructs of the corpse demon's green pill, though not comparable to a Foundation establishment cultivator's full power attack, still possessed half of such force. Even Tang Li, at late Foundation building stage and equipped with numerous magical treasures, barely managed to withstand it. His heart pounding, he thought to himself that if the corpse threw another strange green pill, he would certainly die here today. By now, he had completely lost interest in pursuing Wang Lin's survival, and escape were his only thoughts. Wang Lin had been intently watching Tang Li the entire time. Now a cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth as his eyes flashed with a cold light. He slightly raised his right hand and made a gesture with 2 fingers before him. A green light flashed, and as the panicked Tang Li retreated, he felt a sharp pain in his back. Too terrified to look back, he fled even faster. Wang Lin frowned. Tang Li's already heavily damaged inner armor had slightly deflected the flying sword, preventing it from piercing through. His eyes flickered as he bit his tongue and spat out a mist of blood. The green sword appeared within the blood mist, and with a loud ringing sound, it flashed again, shooting toward Tang Li at extreme speed. In Midra, the green sword appeared in an instant behind Tang Li, aiming for his back. Tang Li suddenly turned his head, his eyes bloodshot, revealing a fierce expression. Several jade talismans immediately flew out from his storage bag, transforming into layers of defensive barriers upon appearance. At the same time, he pointed with his left hand, and the giant sword trembled before rising into the air, ready to slash at Wang Lin's location. Several lightning balls appeared around the giant sword, immediately dispersing to strike at the corpse demon. He was gambling on whether Wang Lin's flying sword would pierce him first, or if his giant sword would cut down his opponent first. If Wang Lin teleported to escape, he wouldn't be able to control the flying sword during the teleportation process. Tang Li planned to use this opportunity to flee in his current state. Nearly exhausted, staying here would only lead to his death. Si Tunim roared, "You're crazy. You're truly insane." As he spoke, he was about to activate the teleportation despite Wang Lin's objection. But just as the blue light appeared from Wang Lin's chest, Wang Lin quickly said, "It's not time to teleport yet. Stop." A fierce expression appeared on his face as he ignored the giant sword descending toward his head, controlling the green sword to flash again, evading the defensive layers and appearing before Tang Li. Panic crossed Tang Li's face as his giant sword was now less than 3 inches from Wang Lin's head. A stream of blood flowed down Wang Lin's forehead, but he didn't even blink. With a savage smile, "He must die." The sword light flashed, and the green sword penetrated the inner armor, shooting out through Tang Li's back in a spray of blood. At that moment, Si Tunin activated the teleportation. In a flash of blue light, Wang Lin's body disappeared from under the giant sword and appeared beside the pale-faced. The giant sword continued its downward slash, creating a deep crack in the ground with a thunderous impact. Ignoring the blood on his forehead, Wang Lin crouched down and pressed his right hand against Tang Li's body. Understanding Wang Lin's intention, Si Tunin immediately released a blue light from the heaven-defying bead. which flowed through Wang Lin's right hand into Tang Li's body. Instantly, Tang Li visibly transformed into a blue eye sculpture, his expression frozen in terror. All of this happened in an extremely short time, so quickly that even the corpse demon hadn't reacted. As Tang Li was frozen, it paused briefly before warily watching Wang Lin. The lightning balls striking at the corpse demon all dissipated, and the giant sword immediately shrank into a small silver sword. Falling from my dren to the ground crack, Wang Lin grabbed the ice sculpture without hesitation and swiftly retreated, the green sword flashing cold light around his body with its stick pointed at the corpse demon. The corpse demon stared at Wang Lin, snarling and howling, about to charge forward. However, after glancing back at the crack in the ground, it hesitated briefly, by which time Wang Lin had already retreated 300 zhang and disappeared with a teleportation. The corpse demon howled in frustration, staring at the direction where Wang Lin had vanished. After a while, it jumped into the ground crack and soon emerged with Tang Li's silver sword, swallowing it excitedly. Wang Lin, carrying the ice sculpture and looking pale, quickly flashed through the forest. After ensuring their safety, he sighed in relief and placed the ice sculpture aside. He took out his spirit gourd and drank all the liquid inside before sitting cross-legged to meditate. The forest was completely quiet. After a long while, Wang Lin slowly opened his eyes, and Si Tunan's dissatisfied voice came through. "Kid, were you crazy earlier? If I had been a moment slower, you would have lost your life," Wang Lin said solemnly. "There was only one chance to kill Tang Li. If we had missed it then, once his spiritual power recovered, there would have been no other opportunity. Moreover, this person has been hunting me for many days. If we let him escape, he would definitely become a major problem in the future. It was worth the gamble. Besides, the speed his giant sword slashed depended on his remaining spiritual power. At that time, he was already exhausted, so the speed couldn't have exceeded my flying sword." Si Tunan fell silent, feeling as if he was seeing Wang Lin for the first time. After a long while, he slowly said, "You've passed. With this mindset, you can establish yourself in the cultivation world." Si Tunan's tone had unconsciously lost its usual arrogance, and for the first time he felt respect for Wang Lin. He questioned whether he himself would have dared to take such a gamble. Wang Lin remained silent, staring at the ice sculpture containing Tang Li, his eyes flickering as he asked, "Can we use him for the foundation stealing technique?" Hearing Wang Lin's question, Si Tunan replied, "Absolutely. Moreover, since he's at the late foundation building stage, using him as a crucible for the foundation stealing technique will make your progress in the foundation building realm faster than others. You'll also gain some of his spiritual roots, which will enhance your natural talent. This kid must have extraordinary talent to achieve such cultivation at his young age." "Wang Lin, what you gained from this life or death gamble was worth it." After finishing, Si Tunan proceeded to explain the foundation's stealing techniques, incantations, and important points one by one. He continued until nightfall before completing his explanation. Wang Lin pondered briefly, then spat out the green sword with the point of his right hand. The sword immediately stabbed into a nearby giant tree. After carving out a tree cavity, Wang Lin grabbed Tang Li and leapt inside. He didn't recall the green sword, but let it patrol the surroundings. The tree cavity wasn't large and was filled with moisture, but Wang Lin couldn't be concerned with that now. He took out his spirit gourd and poured some liquid to clean the wound on his forehead, then composed himself and sat down to meditate. Early the next morning, Wang Lin opened his eyes, his gaze flashing as he spat out a breath of spiritual energy that formed a mist floating in the air. Without pause, he formed hand seals and shot out a blue light. As the blue light entered the spiritual mist, it immediately dispersed, causing the mist to churn like boiling water, mysteriously contracting and expanding. Wang Lin maintained his composure, continuously shooting blue lights into the spiritual mist with his hands. Gradually, The churning of the spiritual mist became more violent, and the frequency of its contraction and expansion increased. Then, with a wave of his right hand, the eye sculpture containing Teng Li floated up. A blue light flashed from Wang Lin's chest, and Si Tunan, without waiting for instructions, immediately dissolved the frozen state. In an instant, the blue crystals on Teng Li's body completely disappeared. Wang Lin's gaze flashed as he pointed at the spiritual mist, which immediately floated to Teng Li and entered through his 7 apertures. Teng Li's body instantly began to shake and convulse, his eyes tightly closed, his face showing an expression of pain. Soon, all the spiritual mist had entered Teng Li's body. Wang Lin took a deep breath, his face showing a serious expression. Without hesitation, he bit his right index finger and drew in the air, creating a strange blood symbol. Wang Lin flipped his right hand and struck the symbol, which immediately flew out and imprinted itself on Teng Li's chest. Teng Li's body violently trembled, his limbs convulsing, blood flowing unstoppably from his nose and mouth. However, the flowing blood didn't drip down but floated up and gathered together. Then a series of crackling sounds came from Teng Li's body. His face suddenly became ruddy, and simultaneously all his exposed skin took on an eerie red color. Drops of blood began seeping from his skin. Wang Lin's expression became even more serious. Without blinking, he drew another blood symbol in the air and struck it onto Teng Li's chest. Teng Li suddenly opened his mouth, letting out several unconscious groans of agony. Then all the blood vessels throughout his body burst open, blood continuously seeping through his skin and floating up to gather together. In an instant, a huge blood sphere appeared above Teng Li's body. By now, Teng Li's body had quickly changed from red to pale white. Wang Lin's forehead was now covered in sweat. He looked at the blood sphere, his hands quickly forming magical seals, sometimes releasing spiritual lights, sometimes drawing symbols. Gradually, the huge blood sphere slowly shrank until it was only the size of a fist, emanating an eerie dark red color. Wang Lin took a deep breath, his entire body now soaked in sweat. Without pausing, he spat out another spiritual mist and shot several blue lights into it. When the spiritual mist was churning, he pointed at Teng Li, and the mist once again entered through his nose, mouth, and 7 apertures. Chapter 85, Foundation Stealing Part 5. Teng Li suddenly opened his eyes. They were lifeless and bloodshot, his lips trembling and teeth clenched tight. Wang Lin drew a complex symbol in the air with his right hand, laid his fingertip and flicked a drop of blood onto it. Upon contact with the blood, the symbol immediately flashed with red light and imprinted itself on Teng Li's forehead. In an instant, Teng Li let out a low groan, his body convulsing even more violently. The muscles throughout his body began to writhe eerily, frantically gathering toward his chest from all directions. Before long, Teng Li's body visibly began to wither rapidly, all his muscles and meridians converging at his chest to form a massive ball of flesh. Wang Lin's eyes flashed as he flipped his right hand and cast another spell. With a bang, the flesh ball separated from Teng Li's body and floated in the air. By now, Teng Li was nothing but skin and bones, resembling a skeleton. Wang Lin took a deep breath and spat out a breath of spiritual energy that merged into the flesh ball. The ball quickly contracted and, after a while, shrank to the same size as the previous blood ball. By this point, exhaustion showed on Wang Lin since he took out a spirit gourd and took a large drink before closing his eyes to meditate. After a short while, he opened his eyes and pointed at Teng Li's body. Immediately, loud cracking sounds erupted as all the bones in Teng Li's body shattered piece by piece, turning to powder that seeped through his skin and gathered together to form a bone sphere. The 3 fist-sized spheres of blood, flesh, and bone arranged themselves in a triangular formation, emanating an otherworldly light. This foundation stealing technique requires extracting the crucible's blood, flesh, bone, soul, and spiritual roots, and the crucible must be kept alive during the extraction of blood, flesh, and bone. It's truly too cruel. Wang Lin sighed, muttering to himself. That's nothing, Si Tunen said unhurriedly. In my country, the practitioners of demonic arts even have a coarse stealing technique. Now that's truly cruel. Not only does the crucible suffer, but the practitioner must also endure unimaginable pain, sacrificing their lifespan for less than a 1% chance of success. Wang Lin remained silent for a moment before focusing his mind. He pointed at Tang Li and began chanting, his speed gradually increasing as his hands formed magical seals. Wisps of white qi began emanating from Tang Li's body, which had been reduced to little more than a pile of flesh, growing increasingly dense. After an unknown period, the white qi had become extremely dense and merged together to form a hazy human figure. Looking closely, one could vaguely make out that the small figure's features were identical to Tang Li's. The small figure's eyes showed confusion as its whole body trembled, appearing as if it might scatter with the slightest breeze. Gradually, the confusion faded and it stared at Wang Lin with venomous hatred, opening its mouth to release several silent screams. Wang Lin didn't even blink as he flipped his right hand and shot out a red light. The small figure seemed terrified of the red light and immediately tried to flee. But within 3 feet of Tang Li's body was like an invisible cage. No matter how the small figure tried to escape, it couldn't break past this boundary. Finally, seeing no way to escape, the small figure's face flashed with ferocity as it charged toward the red light. Wang Lin's expression remained unchanged as he waved his right hand. The red light wrapped around the small figure like a rope, binding it tightly before slowly beginning to pull outward. Wang Lin knew well that the soul extraction step couldn't be rushed. The soul had to be pulled out intact from within the 3-foot boundary to proceed with extracting the spiritual roots, while failing wouldn't affect the foundation stealing itself. It would make it impossible to use the target's spiritual roots to modify his own constitution. The small figure's face twisted in pain as the red light pulled it out bit by bit, until half of it had crossed the 3-foot boundary. Suddenly, a yellow light flashed from the small figure's body, silently shattering the red light rope. The small figure immediately retracted within the 3-foot boundary, the yellow light around it flashing intensely as it quickly became more solid. Wang Lin's face darkened as he stared at the small figure, just as he was about to form another seal. The small figure's face showed terror as it spoke in human language. If you kill me, my great-grandfather won't let you go. He's a core formation expert. If you kill me, you are dead too. A cold light flashed in Wang Lin's eyes as he immediately spat out a large breath of spiritual energy, his hands quickly forming seals and repeatedly striking the spiritual energy until it gradually condensed into a thin thread. The small figure's face showed increasing terror as it spoke harshly. My great-grandfather already knows I'm in danger. He's coming right now. You. Before it could finish, Wang Lin's left hand whipped out, sending the thread humming into the 3-foot boundary to grab the small figure and yank it forcefully outward. The small figure screamed, struggling, "Great-grandfather, save me!" The yellow light around it immediately began flashing violently, seeming to resist Wang Lin's power. Without a word, Wang Lin struck his storage pouch and threw out a spirit gourd. The liquid inside immediately flowed out and merged with the thread in an instant, causing it to suddenly thicken to the width of a finger before pulling again. This time, no matter how the yellow light flashed around the small figure, it was useless. Wang Lin grabbed it out in one motion. The moment it left the 3-foot boundary, the yellow light around the small figure immediately dispersed into yellow mist that churned eerily, revealing a blurry figure within. The figure was wrapped in mist, its features unclear, but its urgent voice could be heard. "Fellow Taoist, let's talk this through." Wang Lin's heart jumped, but Si Tunin immediately said, "Don't worry. This is a core formation expert's virtual external manifestation, different from a physical external manifestation. This virtual form has no attacking power, and he can't see you or know your location. He can only let you hear his voice. Moreover, this virtual form has distance limitations. It seems this person isn't close by. which is why the virtual form is so blurry. As for why it appeared, he must have great care for this Tang Li had left trace of divine sense within his soul. Without another word, Wang Lin pointed at the small figure bound by the spiritual thread. The figure immediately stopped struggling and gradually shrank until it finally became a purple glowing sphere. The virtual manifestation of Tang Li's great-grandfather seemed to sense that Tang Li's soul had been refined. He shouted fiercely, his voice full of hatred, speaking darkly, "Those who kill members of my Tang family will be cursed. Your dead eye, Tang Hui Yuan, will find you one day." The yellow light slowly dispersed. Thousands of miles away on a mountain peak, a black-robed elder stood with a dark expression on his face. His eyes flickered as he clenched his fist, muttering, "Grandson, your great-grandfather swears, whether in heaven or hell, I will avenge you." He struck his chest and spat out a glob of black blood. His right hand quickly moved through the blood, creating ripples of dark red that spread outward, transforming into countless mysterious symbols that lingered between heaven and earth. Then a small figure glowing with purple light shot out from the elder's crown and paused in the sky before sitting cross-legged in my dress. "Curse, arise!" the small figure shouted harshly, forming seals with its hands as its divine sense split into countless parts, merging into each symbol. "Curse, accept." Visibly, the elder's nascent soul grew weak and obviously shrank, clearly having expended a large amount of nascent soul energy. The symbols containing the divine sense all flashed with otherworldly light, flying upward one after another to arrange themselves into a complex formation that spread across half the sky. At this moment, the wind and clouds changed color, and thunder rolled continuously. Cursed, turn! The great formation in the sky began to slowly rotate, with streams of blood-colored lightning appearing within. These lightning bolts connected to form an eerie diamond pattern. Curse, merged! The small figure's final shout shook heaven and earth as it spat out another large amount of nascent soul energy. The formation in the sky spun faster and faster. The red lightning multiplied, and the diamond pattern grew brighter. Then the formation's range began to shrink at a visible speed until finally, along with the red lightning, it all condensed onto the diamond pattern. The pattern slowly descended from the sky and imprinted itself on the small figure's forehead. The small figure's lips curved into a dark smile as it said ominously, "Those who kill members of my Ting family must suffer my curse." Ting Hui Yuan's curse. In the tree cavity, 4 spheres floated before Wang Lin. Without hesitation, he cast several spells at Tang Li's body, causing countless crystalline points of light to float out. These dense points of light immediately lost 1/3 of their number to dispersion after leaving the body. Wang Lin took a deep breath. Knowing these light points were the so-called spiritual roots, he quickly spat out a spiritual mist to envelop and absorb the point. The light points immediately showed strong resistance, and another third dispersed during the absorption process, leaving only 1/3 successfully merged with the mist. At this moment, Wang Lin's forehead suddenly lit up as a purple diamond pattern appeared. Wang Lin immediately noticed and touched his forehead, his expression changing. Situnin immediately exclaimed, "This person has made quite a move. Wang Lin, you've been cursed by a core formation expert who's sacrificed his lifespan. As long as you enter within a certain range of him, he can instantly appear by your side. This person actually knows such an advanced formation curse." Wang Lin stood up abruptly, his face dark, and asked, "Is there any way to break it?" Situnin pondered briefly before saying proudly, "Actually, you don't need to worry too much. From my analysis, this type of curse has no offensive power, it only serves as a positioning and instant transmission mechanism. Though this person's curse is advanced, I specifically studied these types of curses that use formations to trigger spiritual energy fluctuations in heaven and earth. Although I can't perform them now without a physical body, I can still help disrupt the curse's effects. As long as you're not too close to him, with my help and concealment, he won't be able to find you no matter what. Don't worry. Wang Lin, this is actually an opportunity. I once happened to obtain an ancient secret technique that uses curses as a bridge for backlash. It requires the practitioner to have foundation establishment cultivation and some spiritual items as aids. When successful, you can obtain half of the target's cultivation. TSK, TSK. You really are lucky, kid.